morning. Thank you for joining our webinar. Today we're going to be reviewing Spectra's new migration solutions for media and entertainment. We have Piotr Polanowski, Product Manager at Spectra Logic, who will be kicking off the presentation this morning. Before we start, you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen there is a dashboard. If you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and enter those into the questions section. We will be hosting a Q&A once the slide deck has been completed. So without any further ado, Piotr, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Katie. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this seminar today. So during the next hour, we will give you an overview of the modern migration solution that we designed for secondary and archival data storage used in media and entertainment vertical. I hope everybody can hear me okay. We will take the questions at the end, like Katie said. So we're going to start out with a quick overview of the industry and what's going on, what are the changes over there. Then we'll move into the migration solution, our complete offering. I will give you an overview of both what is it all about and also some of the technology behind it. And then finally, we'll end with how to get more information about what I just have shown you. So just to start out and make sure we are talking about the same thing, everybody's on the same page, let's look at the quickly media and entertainment storage middleware. You have to remember, middleware has been created to address very specific market need. It's a very important product. It came from the history. Anybody who has been in the storage industry for quite a while remembers the days when storage used to come in all kinds of different flavors, connectivity, command sets, types of the interface that you use to interface with it. So the middleware was actually designed to hide that complexity of underlying storage back in the days from the media asset management system, from the systems that were designed to use it. So they could focus on their core functionality without worrying about underlying storage, isolated from rapidly evolving storage technology. When you had the new disk come out, the command set has changed. The media asset management software did not have to change. The middleware was taking care of those changes and shielding the MEM applications from that. It also added some specific vertical features for this space. For example, partial file restore is one that comes to mind. There are a few other ones, things like metadata storage and so on. And then finally, this middleware layer was also designed to offload some of the processing of the data. So instead of media asset management system spending time moving the data around, the middleware could take care of those details. But like they say, the time doesn't stand still. The market has changed. And, this is just the reality of the technology. So we have the new technologies that were introduced and became mainstream. So if you think about in the last 10 years, we had things like cloud object storage, the S3 becoming a new standard really in the object storage. We have LTFS, we have open source. Cloud is on everybody's mind nowadays. It's one of the executive directives that anybody who works within IT is very familiar with. The question is, what are we doing with the cloud? How are we integrating with the cloud? And then finally, because of all of these changes, the middleware is no longer as critical. We have standardized a number of the interfaces. Lots of this functionality has been settled, and the change is not as rapid anymore when it comes to the interfacing. So, the middleware itself is no longer as critical as it used to be. The second trend that has been really taking place is, over time, the middleware has been designed for a very specific reason. It was to isolate the end users from those changes. And then, of course, as with everything, the new features have been added along the along the way. So new connectivity, new types of things that middleware performs for you, things like searching, metadata, DR capabilities, like I mentioned, partial file recovery, and so on. All of those new features are a great thing to have. Of course, everybody loves them, but of course they come at a price as well. So they add the complexity, they complicate the support and the development of the product, and of course, the vendors who created those products, I mean, it's a natural business thing. They have to recover those costs somehow. They have to support this growing software. So, you have the costs that are associated with each one of the features, the charges for the capacity that you're adding, for the DR, for the storage tier, for the multi-site. So all of those things, come at the cost, and quite soon it becomes, a really large part of the system. And then the final piece that you're facing within the media and entertainment middleware is the actual business disruption due to acquisitions and mergers out there. So, when the company is a standalone company, you have this situation where they are really focused on one thing and one thing only, and they tend to do that thing very well, and they keep developing and driving in that one area to gain the market share. As they become acquired or they merge, the business strategy changes, usually as a result of a new ownership. And again, it's a natural part of the cycle. So, the focus tends to shift from making products to maybe recovering cost of merger and acquisition, meeting the goals of the new owner. There might be a part, they might be a much bigger company with different goals, different markets that they go after. They might operate in a totally different manner than what the company is used to. Some of the flexibility might be lost, right? The profits typically do not flow as readily back into the business unit to support the development. And in lots of cases, and the new development has to meet much higher hurdles to support core business of the new owner. And some of these disruptions do not manifest themselves right away, but it might take a few years. The key people leave, the staff gets laid off, the support gets scaled back, the support pricing changes. So those are all of the things that are, we believe, are affecting the media and entertainment middleware. So I'm going to talk very briefly about why the middleware is getting a little bit too expensive for this storage area. And I think lots of people who work closely with the storage will realize, you keep hearing the story about, the storage costs are rapidly collapsing, 50%, 80% over the last several years. Why is the cost of my storage not going down? Because the cost of the storage contains, that middleware charge, right? So if your cost of your hardware storage is going down, your middleware costs are probably not. They are most likely staying the same or going up. The development engineering is more expensive. You have more features, you have more support. So your cost becomes bigger and bigger piece of your infrastructure overall. So, middleware used to be about 25 to 30% of the total storage cost. Nowadays, it's probably more to the point where the cost of that layer that gives you some of the capabilities is becoming overwhelming to the cost of your system. It's almost the situation where the tail is wagging the dog, right? So the lower cost, the overall cost of dollars per gigabyte is not necessarily declining as rapidly as you would expect. So the bottom line here is, in lots of cases, middleware costs more than the storage system itself. So faced with these issues, what is the customer going to do? What is the end user supposed to do? So, you start looking at different options, especially, like I said, with the executive directives of looking at the different systems, ways of doing different things to the system. You need to modernize your system. You might need to upgrade it at some point. You might need to expand it to account for new sites. You might increase the storage. You might have now more dispersed organization. this change could be taking over a period of time, but the users do need to start planning ahead and putting strategy in place to account for all of those changes. So basically the users need to migrate to new platform, to stable platform with the roadmap in the future. Like I said, they need to integrate the cloud into their environment, and they need to move from those proprietary tape standards to open standards, right? So you have the LTFS. And of course, the bottom line is you have to contain the costs. That's usually never changes in the business. What's very important at the same time, the ongoing operations of the business cannot be stopped and put on hold, right? So, transparent and seamless migration is necessary. It's needed. It's one of those major entry points. You cannot have disruption to the production workflow. So you cannot impact the ongoing core operations of your organization, right? Which is storing, making content available for editors, newsrooms, productions, organizations, whoever the end user of your data might be. So ideally, you would have no disruption to the production workflow or very minimal. You would have no perceived difference during and after migration, and there would be really nothing that would change for the end users of the system. They would still see the same way of accessing your data. It would still function the same way. The response would be the same or even better, right? So those are kind of issues that are faced by the customers and by the end users, and of course by the people who design these systems. So let's look really quickly what are the migration options for the different media asset management systems out there. So there is a number of major media asset management systems out there, among them CutDV, Imagine, Grass Valley, we can name a few other ones. In most of the cases, those systems require the scripts based on the environment they are running in. The one that we have focused initially on is Avid. Avid, MEM, and PEM do not handle migration automatically. And what's really interesting about those systems is they have numerous and custom MEM, PEM configurations. If you go to the customer sites, which I have spent a few months doing now, you will see all kinds of different combinations of each one of them and the destination where the organization wants to get. So our migration solution was created specifically to support Avid migrations. There is nothing within our solution that prevents it from being used for other types of the systems and moving the data between different systems. But our initial release and what we have been working really hard on is the Avid types of environments. So let's move into the second part of this overview. So Spectra Migration Solution has really three key things that we keep in mind. So we wanted to enable transparent movement of data into Spectra storage layer. We wanted to seamlessly integrate into existing environment, so you can flip the switch and just start using the new data storage. And of course, it's very important, like I said before, no disruption to production data access. So we achieved those three goals by utilizing our BlackPearl object storage system and what we call escape pod Rio broker technology. Those two pieces of the equipment that we have, that whole system, is very customizable, again, to fit individual customer needs. And that's, of course, required because each one of the customers is a little bit different. And they have different needs, they have different scalability, they have different amounts of storage that they need to configure. So really quickly before we move on, let's look at the BlackPearl object storage system. So we have designed BlackPearl. We released it about 5-6 years ago. And the goal was to use the standard object storage interface to it. We had to make a few changes to it. We had to customize it to account for some of the behaviors for tape backend storage. But that means, we are presenting an interface on the front end that's very close to S3 with some modifications. We call it Spectra S3 interface. And then behind BlackPearl, we are able to place all kinds of different types of storage systems. So we have high performance disk that we can place. We have a storage high capacity disk. Of course, we support the tape. This is where the roots of the company are. We do support replication to the alternate sites. So you could actually have multiple sites set up with the BlackPearl at each one of the sites. And then we also added the capability within the last 2 years of storing the DR data on Amazon Web Services and Azure, as well as some of the other smaller players out there, depending on who you are working with specifically. What BlackPearl provides as well is we provide a policy-based data management. So you can specify when the copies are made, where the data gets stored, when does it go to the cloud for the DR purposes. And then, of course, we have it's been in the marketplace for a number of years now. So we have a number of integrations with most PEM and MEM type of products out there. What's very nice about the BlackPearl as well, the technological capabilities are very nice, but there's also a business side and justification side. So BlackPearl has been designed to be very economical. So typically it's half the cost of competitive offerings. We don't have any additional billings for storage capacity, operating system updates. Usually all of that is hidden underneath the covers. It's a single price. We have a very predictable service costs on the BlackPearl as well. So there is a service cost lock capability. And of course, very important, like I mentioned before, no special licensing. So when you add multiple copies, formats, media, replication, there are no extra fees. The only extra charge we actually have is through the cloud out management. And that's required because, quite honestly, everybody is in the business to make money. The way we make money is by selling you the storage hardware. When we don't sell the storage hardware, we have to recoup our costs as well. That's just the reality of it. So now let's talk really briefly about the technology behind the Spectra Migration Solution. There is lots of boxes on this diagram. What you really need to remember about our Rio broker, which is the heart of our migration system, is it performs a number of functions that allow us to operate and migrate data all at the same time without disrupting the MEM-PEM system. So it actually resolves the data access. So it decides where the data is pulled from. So Rio broker will receive a request from the client system, and it will decide whether it needs to pull the data from the legacy agent, whether the data is still residing on the legacy data storage location, or whether it needs to pull it from the new storage, the BlackPearl partition on the end storage. So that's very important. You can have two locations all running at the same time, and your media asset management system does not need to be aware where this data is residing. We take care of that resolution. The second function of the system is it actually manages the metadata. So we can add, as necessary, metadata to the data we are storing and the data we are migrating, and that data is available to the MEM-PEM system through the calls. Third, it handles actually migration workflow. This is the reason for this system to exist. So we have what we call escape path agent, and that escape path agent will actually pull the data out of the legacy system and migrate it into our storage, into the BlackPearl system. The escape path agent, the migration agent, is very configurable. So you can actually configure things like when do you want to do migration, what happens during the migration, right? What data needs to get updated. We customize this agent also for specific system that we are using. We are working very closely with Avid to be able to make changes within their system without end user intervention. We also use the Rio broker for supporting the different agents for different types of middleware. So if you have multiple systems, for each one of them, we could create an agent that could access the data. So for example, if you have two different types of legacy storage systems, for example, if you have a front porch digital or SGL, you could access both of them at the same time and migrate the data out of the systems as well. And then within the media and entertainment, the very important functionality is the partial file restore. You don't always want to pull back the full file when you only need 20-second clip. And of course, the SkyPath broker was designed to provide that functionality as well. So part of that's the technology. We just talked through we went through the technology that we use within the Spectra Migration Solution. So what Spectra Migration Solution really is we call it a three-part project type of offering for our customers. Typically, what we will do is we will start with the system assessment of looking at the customer's current storage system. We will do on-site evaluation of the current system. And based on that evaluation, we will prepare the migration plan for the specific customer. Like I mentioned before, each system is very different. So we have to prepare the migration plan for each one of them. So that includes the workflow, the resources, and the hardware requirements that you need to use for the migration. We need to estimate customization if there is any required. Typically, the system assessment is anywhere between 2 to 5 day engagement between Spectra and the end customer who's migrating the data. Based on that first phase of the project, we will actually perform the other two parts of the project. So we will prepare a pilot and customize the system as necessary once we have the engagement with the customer. And that includes things, we will prove the migration strategy, we'll configure the migration system, and then we will develop any tools for customer unique elements. For example, some of the customers might have some data that is not even under control of their media asset management system. And at some point, they might want to bring it into the overall arching system. This is where we will prepare anything that's necessary to support customer objectives. And then the final phase of the project is the product implementation, production implementation. So we'll integrate our system with the existing system, and of course, perform the data migration. And for some of the customers, especially the larger ones, this phase could take anywhere from 3 months to a year or more. If you consider amount of data some of the customers are storing out there, the number of tapes, the number of disks that they have to migrate into a system, this could be a major undertaking. It can be either implemented and completed by us, or it can be done by the customer with our help. So those are kind of the three major phases that we see in every migration project that we get involved in. So system assessment, we come in, we look at the system, we prepare a pilot, we work with the customer very closely, customize everything, and then we put it, once we prove that everything works correctly, there might be some Q&A involved in there as well, we will put the system into production and migrate the data into the Spectra storage environment. So let's talk about, this was a very high-level overview of the system and what our solution is and what our offering is. So where can you find more information? So we have put together a very extensive brochure that goes through our solution. It kind of gives you the background and some of the elements and benefits you can access through this link. The link, we also have a survey. So if you have a specific customer or you want to find out more information, survey is a very good place to start. Of course, most of you out there, I think, work with Spectra in one capacity or another, whether as an end user or as a value-added reseller. So please reach out to your Spectra contact rep, or just reach us through our website. We can always have more involved conversation, and of course we'll be at the two places that are coming up that are very specific and very big for media and entertainment. So we'll be at NAB, so please come visit us at our booth. And of course, we'll be at Avid Connect as well. Avid is one of the many partners that we work with very closely on this project. As I mentioned before, this is where we target our efforts. So with that, I will leave this up for you to look at very closely. Those are some of the clients that are currently working with our BlackPearl system that have been certified. There are many more that we are always working on certification, but these are the current certified ones. So this concludes the presentation. So I will open it up for questions. Katie?
Excellent. So we did receive a couple questions during the webinar. Okay. The first asks, when migration occurs, does data have to go to tape or can it be migrated to other storage targets?
It can be migrated to other storage targets. So like I mentioned before, we do support multiple storage tiers behind our BlackPearl. So we have that enterprise disk, we have the mass capacity storage disk, and we also have the cloud, and of course the tape, which is the base of our storage. But depending on the customer, we can configure the system whichever way we want to. One of the very important points to make out here, it has to be type of storage that's supported behind the BlackPearl. So behind BlackPearl, we support Spectra tape libraries, and then we support Spectra specific disk, and of course the cloud providers that I mentioned before.
Perfect. And so that Spectra disk, that's Spectra Arctic Blue, correct?
Yes, correct.
Excellent. And it can go to just one medium. It doesn't always have to go to tape.
No, it does not. It's basically,
okay.
Most of the customers, especially the larger ones, they will use both disk and tape because it makes sense it's very economical. Once you look very closely at the numbers and you look at the ROI, you will find out that tape does have a big play in current storage environment. But for some of the smaller customers, the ones that are probably under a petabyte of storage, maybe half a petabyte, for them, it makes lots of sense just to have a disk-only system. There is nothing that prevents them from having disk-only system.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we've got one other question. Does every tape have to be read to perform migration?
It, again, depends on the type of the system, depends on the type of customer goals. For lots of the customers, they will look to move from older generation tape, for example, LTO4 or LTO5, consolidate down the number of tapes that they have. In those type of cases, you will have to read every tape and rewrite it into, for example, the newest generation LTO7 or LTO8. For some of the other types of the systems that we have out there, we are actually able to take the existing tapes, move them into Spectra library, and ingest them into the BlackPearl managed system without having to read and rewrite the tapes. So again, like I mentioned before, there are many different types of systems, many different types of configurations out there. Each one of them is different. That's why we have that assessment phase of the project.
Excellent, thank you. So the last question that I have here, and I'll give it a few minutes for everyone to enter their questions prior to us ending the webinar. The last question that I have here is, what other clients is Spectra working on certification with?
So we usually don't share our clients until they are certified. That's why we go through our certification process. But there are a few more along the lines of Grass Valley and Imagine that we are working with. They have not been certified yet. So until they pass through our certification process, we officially do not support them. But there is always a pipeline of number of clients that we work with.
Correct. So we do have 4 or 5 in the pipeline that we're working on right now, and we will be announcing those at NAB. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. And keep in mind, if there are specific clients that we don't work with, but your environment is built around them, as a part of the assessment, this is the evaluation that we can perform as well. in order to work in your environment, we would have to work with the client, get them certified. And quite honestly, with the way our BlackPearl system is designed, some of the clients, we have certified them, they completed development within a week or two. We had them certified within a few days, and we had them up and running. The Spectra BlackPearl system has been designed to be very flexible and very easy to work with.
Okay, thank you. So we do have two more quick questions. Which third-party HSM systems do you support migration from?
So currently, we are working with the two most prevalent ones, FrontPorch Digital, Diva, and we are working with the SGL.
Fantastic. Okay, and then the last question that we have is, can you restore from another vendor's tape directly, or does everything have to be restored and re-archived?
So again, depends on the system. For some of the vendors, especially the newer generation ones that have been released after the LTFS became the standard, we are able to restore from those tapes or even ingest them directly without remastering them. For some of the older ones, they use their proprietary system, proprietary format on the tape. In those cases, we might have to read the data back through the system and rewrite it using the BlackPearl.
Okay. And this is a question from the previous question asker. I have an Avid archive, and there's lots of metadata and Avid associated in the archive. I see you can restore the media files, but how do you deal with the archive metadata and link it to BlackPearl?
So this is actually part of our magic with the Avid. We are working very closely with the engineering team over there, and we split those responsibilities between what we do within our technology, and we also have some specific API calls into the Avid products to be able to maintain those metadata associations. We are even working on some of the projects where we might remaster some of the files, put them into the newer formats supported by Avid as a part of the migration.
All right, and just got another question. What is the expected cost of assessment and scope? And is there a margin available to resellers? Same for POC. John, we'll probably get back to you on that offline. But we do have tools that we're working to create, and Piotr can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so basically we do have tools that give you a quick overview of ROI expected over the number of years. And yes, we will work on the specific project with the reseller. Obviously, if you involve us in your project, we will pay you. There is margin available for the project itself. And again, it's a very specific, each project is very different. When you're talking about a huge archive with 10,000 tape, it's going to be very different than 40 tape small station that you're working with. So each one of them is very, very flexible.
Fantastic. Okay, so it looks like that concludes all of our questions at this stage. As Piotr has mentioned previously, Spectra is going to be exhibiting at both ACA, which is Avid Connect Association, and NAB in Las Vegas in the coming weeks. If you'd like to schedule a meeting with us, or if you have any questions regarding today's webinar, go ahead and reach out to us at broadcast@spectralogic.com. We just got one more quick question. Sorry, one last question. Can you integrate with my IBM library?
So we could, again, this is very specific to your configuration. We cannot put the IBM library behind the BlackPearl. BlackPearl only supports Spectra libraries. However, we can read the data out of your IBM library. We should be able to read the data out of the IBM library using the existing system. And once you start looking at the numbers, you will find that actually we can replace that IBM library probably and still save you money on the overall solution compared to the existing. But again, this is the subject to assessment. That's why we want to have that assessment perform up front, so we can answer those questions, with certainty. You're not going to embark on this major project just based on estimate.
Correct. And on that front, we do have incentive programs in place where you can swap out your old hardware for Spectra hardware. Okay.
Excellent.
I think that's it for questions. Again, please feel free to reach out to Spectra at broadcast@spectralogic.com. Come visit us at Avid Connect and at NAB in Las Vegas. And we appreciate you joining in on our webinar and look forward to working with you in the future.